Nancy Mariana Mestre Vargas was born in 1975 in the city of Barranquilla in Colombia. She was the daughter of Martín Mestre Vargas and Nancy Vargas Zaraba, and had another brother whose name I couldn't find. In childhood, she was described as a cheerful, outgoing, and loving child. As a teenager, according to her friends, Nancy was a very happy, honest young woman who loved life. Still, according to them, her greatest quality was frankness. She was a direct person, and what she had to say, she said without fear. Nancy was also very attached to her family. She considered her father her best friend and her mother her greatest teacher. She studied at the bilingual Marymount College, considered one of the best schools in the country, where students received an excellent education and already spoke fluent English. Nancy had the dream of going to study in the United States. She really wanted to get to know the country and its culture. On December 31, 1993, the Mestre Vargas family was gathered at their house to celebrate the New Year. The family had plans to go out and celebrate elsewhere, but they didn't because the eldest son had suffered an injury during a football match and needed to rest. Nancy and her family were very happy. The young woman had managed to pass a test to enter a university in the United States. She was close to realizing her dream. But unfortunately, that dream would be taken from her brutally. As the family celebrated, a man named Jaime Enrique Zada Cormani arrived at their home in a pickup truck accompanied by a young man named Victor Durian Quintero. Jamie was a businessman who was almost twice Nancy's age. He had known the young woman for some time, and the two were dating. Jaime asked Nancy's parents for permission to go out with her that New Year's Eve. Nancy's parents agreed, but asked him to take care of her and bring her back by 3 a.m. However, the hours passed and Nancy didn't return home as agreed. In the middle of the night, Martin, who had already gone to sleep with his family, woke up and noticed that the light on the stairs was still on. He found it odd because as soon as Nancy got home and went to her bedroom, she was supposed to turn that light off. The young woman's father went to her room to check if she had arrived and had just forgotten to turn off the light. But upon entering the room, he saw that the bed was empty. Very worried, he decided to go out into the city in search of his daughter. He went to several clubs that Nancy used to go to, but he didn't find her in any of them. He then decided to go to Jaime Zada's house in search of news about his daughter. It was January 1, 1994, a new year that had started in the worst possible way for the Mestre Vargas family. Upon arriving at the residence around 6 a.m., he was met by Jaime's mother, who was cleaning the floor of what appeared to be blood. Martin asked what it was about and where his daughter was. Jaime's mother responded that Nancy had been in an accident and had been taken to the hospital. She also said that all the blood on the floor was the girl's. Martin was desperate and immediately went to the hospital, Clínica del Caribe, which was where Nancy was. There, Martin met with Alberto Sardi, Jaime's father, the man who had taken Nancy out of her house the night before. Alberto told the young woman's father that a tragedy had happened and that Nancy had tried to take her own life with a shot to the head. Martin cried desperately. He warned his wife and eldest son about what had happened, and they quickly went to the hospital. For the family, it made no sense that a young woman had tried to take her own life. She was very happy and had just gone to university to study in the United States and fulfill her dream. They knew there was more to the story than what was told. Nancy was hospitalized for 8 days. During this period, she underwent some surgeries, but due to complications from her serious injuries, she didn't survive and died. Martin later said that on the last day of his daughter's life, the doctors told him and the family that the young woman wouldn't survive. He then, along with his wife, entered the room where Nancy was hospitalized. Together, they began to sing a song called Daddy's Beautiful Girl, a song they used to sing to the young woman since she was a little girl. Martin said that while they were singing, his daughter's heart began to stop, and he and his wife were at her side when she passed away. The loss of the young woman devastated her family and friends, who were overwhelmed by feelings of sadness and confusion. None of Nancy's relatives or acquaintances believed the version given by Jaime's family. For them, this version made no sense. An investigation was carried out by police, and forensic analysis at the time found that the version given by Jaime's family didn't match the evidence. There were no traces of gunpowder on Nancy's right hand, which was on the same side of the temple as the gunshot wound. On the contrary, there was gunpowder on the hand opposite to the side of the temple where the wound was. This indicated that someone had tried to simulate that the young woman had shot herself. On Nancy's body, several wounds were found on her arms, legs, and intimate parts, where male fluids from 2 different men were also discovered. Additionally, there was skin residue under Nancy's fingernails, which indicated that she had tried to defend herself against someone. After the police revealed to family members and the public that Jaime's family had lied and that Nancy was actually the victim of a crime, the news quickly spread throughout Colombia. The case was widely reported by the media at the time and generated a significant public outcry. A few days later, Martin received an anonymous letter stating the alleged reason why his daughter had been the victim of a crime. According to that letter, on New Year's Eve, Nancy had caught Jaime in his room wearing makeup and dressed as a woman, having intimate relations with other people, including men. The young woman then got scared and ran from Jaime's house, but she was chased and caught by him and a few other men who were in the room. Officials at the hospital where Nancy was admitted said that she was taken there wrapped in a sheet and that under that sheet there was mud and some burrs stuck to it. This means the Deschamps family and the other people who were in the house even took the young woman to a forest area where they were going to abandon her, but for some reason they changed their minds and decided to take her to the hospital. While all this was happening, Jaime Said had vanished, and despite being searched for in several places, no one was able to find him. On July 5, 1996, when he was considered a fugitive, Jaime Said was sentenced by Colombian justice to 27 years in prison for the crimes against Nancy Mestre. Authorities couldn't find Jaime Said anywhere. Many believed he had left the country and fled to the United States. In April 1998, he was placed on Interpol's wanted red list. Despite the efforts of authorities in different countries to locate him, Jaime was not found. He had hidden himself very well. Jaime comes from a wealthy family, and they certainly offered all the support and resources that helped him escape. With that, he could be anywhere on the planet since for him money was not an issue. Martin Mestre, Nancy's father, knew that with each passing day the chances of finding Jaime were becoming more and more remote. He decided he wasn't going to sit idly by, just waiting for the authorities to find him. As a reserve Navy officer, Martin knew he would need to use his intelligence to find the man who took his daughter's life. He then proceeded to take various investigation-featured courses, from the most basic to the most advanced. Through these courses, Martin acquired a lot of knowledge and put it into practice with the intention of achieving what the authorities couldn't: locating Jaime. As he had no idea where Jaime Said might be and no clue as to his whereabouts, his only option was to get close to his family. Martin obviously couldn't do this using his real identity. He approached Jaime's family through social media with 4 fake profiles he created: 2 men and 2 women with Arabic surnames, from the Arauca region of Colombia, where the Said family came from. He gained their trust. All this work would only bear fruit 26 years later, at the end of 2019. While checking open conversations on internet profiles of Jaime's relatives, Martin noticed that certain keywords began to appear, among them, Samaria. Martin and 2 other men who were helping him in the investigation thought that Samaria referred to Santa Marta, a city on the coast of Colombia. They continued investigating, and shortly after they discovered that Samaria was not the coastal city in Colombia, but Santa Maria, a neighborhood in the city of Belo Horizonte, capital of the state of Minas Gerais in Brazil. That's right. By all indications, Haim Sadi had been hiding all this time in Brazil. After collecting various pieces of information that corroborated this theory, Martin Mestre forwarded the details to Interpol. Interpol contacted the police in Brazil and passed on the information regarding the profile of Haim Sadi. Brazilian agents then started looking for someone in the city of Belo Horizonte who matched this profile. In January 2020, they found a man who used the name Henrique dos Santos Abdallah. The agents began to monitor this man. They followed him for a while and managed to get a fingerprint from him through a glass he used in a bar. In possession of Henrique's fingerprint, the agents compared it to Jaime Assad's fingerprint, and the result was positive. Henrique dos Santos Abdallah was actually Jaime Henrique Sana de Cormany. Interpol agents were notified of this confirmation. They then set up an operation in conjunction with Brazilian police to capture the fugitive. Jaime Assad was arrested and offered no resistance to the police. Martin Mestre was notified of the arrest of the man he had been looking for almost 3 decades. He said that upon receiving the news, he began to cry, knelt down and thanked God. The news of Jaime's arrest reverberated in Brazil and Colombia. Many who followed the case were relieved to know that he was finally arrested after so many years. For the authorities, Jaime fled Colombia in 1994 straight to Brazil and moved from country to country. Assad believed that in Brazil, Jaime managed to hide very well, and as mentioned, he probably had help from family members to support himself. In 1998, he assumed the false identity of Henrique dos Santos Abdallah. The following year, in 1999, he obtained a driver's license that was renewed in 2014 and 2016. He even managed to open accounts in several banks during this period. Jaime also got married, had 2 children, and opened a company. In the words of Martin Mestre, Jaime practically erased and rebuilt his life from scratch. The agents who helped capture the fugitive discovered that he led a life beyond suspicion, but found it strange that he had used his real name on his children's birth certificates, something very unusual for someone who is hiding and doesn't want to draw attention. Another strange thing is the fact that he had been in a stable union since 1995, but only made it official in February 2020, almost a month after being arrested. According to sources, this marriage would help him stay in Brazil and prevent extradition to Colombia to answer for the crime he committed there. In the declaration of stable union, as well as in the children's birth certificates, he used his real name. From the moment he was arrested, Jaime claimed innocence. He even wrote a letter where he stated he was being wrongly accused and gave his version of the events that occurred that dawn. According to him, he and Nancy were staying in their room, drinking heavily and doing drugs. At one point, the two realized it was past the agreed time for the young woman to return home. Nancy was very worried about this, and Jaime told her he was going to take a quick shower and then he would take her home. He then went to the bathroom to take a shower, and that's when he heard a gunshot. Startled, he left the bathroom quickly to see what had happened. He said that at that moment, he found Nancy in bed with a head wound and a gun beside her. This letter reached the Colombian press, and needless to say, the victim's family and friends were outraged. For them, it wasn't enough for him to have done what he did. Now he wanted to tarnish the young woman's image. Not to mention that this version given by Jaime doesn't align with the forensic evidence found. And there is still the issue of his mother trying to clean up the crime scene, essentially getting rid of potential evidence that could put her son and others involved in jail. In that same letter, Jaime also wrote that when he fled Colombia, he went to a town in the interior of Amazonas called Tabatinga. He said that Nancy was still alive in the hospital while he was in the city, and that when he heard the news of her passing, his world collapsed. However, Fernando Oliveira, Jaime's lawyer, gave a different version during an interview. The lawyer said that Jaime stayed in Colombia until the last day of Nancy's life, as he had hoped she would wake up and tell them what had happened that morning. When that didn't happen, he decided to flee to Brazil. Well, it looks like the two didn't exactly agree on what they were going to say before giving interviews and ended up complicating matters. You must be thinking how shocked his wife was to learn that the man she had been with for over 20 years wasn't who he claimed to be, that he was actually a fugitive with his name on Interpol's red list, wanted for a serious crime committed in another country. Nothing to be worried about. She wasn't shocked at all. She knew everything. Not only did she know, but she also gave an interview where she defended her husband and repeated his version of events on national television. The woman, who was Brazilian and whose name was not revealed, also said that after 1 year of their relationship, Jaime told her everything. He claimed he was being unfairly accused of a crime he didn't commit in Colombia. You see, sincerity is one of the pillars of a healthy relationship. No wonder they've been together for over 20 years. Martin Mestre saw the interview of Jaime Assad's wife and said that the woman has every right to give her opinion, but she has become blind over the years. He stated that legally she is an accomplice to the crime, since she was aware her husband was an outlaw, accused of a serious crime. Martin also said the woman had a moral obligation to denounce her husband to the authorities, and that if Jaime was truly innocent, he should have gone to Colombia to prove it. Jaime was imprisoned for about 10 months at the Nelson Hungría Penitentiary Complex in the city of Contagium, Minas Gerais, where he awaited the court's decision. His extradition to Colombia seemed just a matter of time. However, the crime had already expired, and the case was taken to the federal Supreme Court, which would give the final decision on whether Jaime Assad would be extradited or not. At the STF, Minister Carmen Lucia and Minister Gilmar Mendez voted in favor of Jaime Assad's extradition, while Ministers Edson Fachin and Ricardo Lewandowski voted against. The fifth minister, General Fino de Mello, was on leave, and the law determines that in cases like this, the tie favors the defendant. Thus, Jaime Assad was released from prison and returned to live his life normally with his wife and 2 children. Currently, he is almost 60 years old and is free, though he was convicted of the crime of ideological falsehood for falsifying documents while in Brazil. Nancy Mestre's family and friends were devastated by the STF's decision. All the work and effort of years seemed to have been in vain. Martin Mestre said he would not give up trying to bring justice for his daughter. He and his family hired a team of international lawyers based in Washington, United States, and together with the family's Brazilian lawyers, they continue to look for legal avenues to ensure that justice reaches Jaime Assad. Martin also wrote a letter to the STF after learning of their decision not to extradite the defendant, but so far he has not received a response. Well, all we can do now is wait and hope that justice is served. Any news regarding this case, I'll bring it here on the channel for you. And if I forget, feel free to send me a message to remind me. As you know, age comes and memory fails sometimes. All right, folks, that's it for today. Thanks for watching until the end. Best wishes, and I'll see you next time.